All right, Luginbill is fresh back from Happy Valley, where he saw SMU and Penn State in round one of the college football playoffs. What is up, Lugs? How are you, my friend?
Good morning, guys. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all that great stuff.
Yeah, all tied into one. Same to you and the entire Luginbill family. You're on campus every Saturday with college football games. Was this the same feel? Could you feel a little more juice being a playoff game? What was the feel like there in Happy Valley?
It was different. There was more juice, and I think you could feel it sitting at home. You could feel it sitting on your sofa. If you were watching on TV starting on Friday night, just, to have a whiteout game in a college football playoff scenario, and it wasn't at night, and it was 22 degrees. It was about 12 degrees wind chill. You have half the Penn State student section wearing T-shirts. It was gnarly, man, and it was a tough environment. And I think what we saw throughout the entire weekend is that home field played a big role. In 3 of the 4 contests, the weather elements played a big role, and I loved it. I loved the feel for it. I thought it was a bucket list type of item. And then, fast forward to this week, we'll get more. We'll get back into the feel of a true bowl season as we embark on the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl settings. I think those two will be big crowds. We're worried about the other two, but that's a discussion for another day. Should weather be a factor? I mean, that means we're best team doesn't always win if weather is a factor. I think the best teams won this weekend, but if we're going to factor in the weather, everyone keeps talking about had to play in the weather. At some point, weather is going to help an inferior team beat a better team. Is that what we really want in the playoffs? They try to avoid it in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they do try to avoid it in the Super Bowl, but it's really no different than the month of November in the vast majority of this country in college football. You're probably going to be playing in, close to freezing temperatures. And, it's the same for everybody. I know in this particular setting with SMU and Penn State, it had been cold all week long in Happy Valley, and Penn State was practicing indoors. Right? Well, it was 70 degrees in Dallas, Texas, so SMU obviously wasn't able to simulate the cold weather, but you got to handle it. And it's the same for everybody once you step out onto that field. I think it's part of the deal. I think it adds another element to it to challenge the mental toughness, challenge your fortitude, block out what Nick Saban would call the clutter and stuff that doesn't matter, and see who's got the fortitude to withstand it and then utilize it as a positive. And I think we saw that. I agree with you, Jim. The best 4 teams won on this weekend. And listen, it started Friday night, and then you get everybody, this team doesn't belong and that team doesn't belong. Well, guess what? Nobody belonged this weekend. Right? Yeah. The SEC didn't belong. The ACC didn't belong. The Big Ten didn't belong. If you don't like it, I get it. Change the criteria. Make it less subjective. But here's the thing that people have got to remember, and they've got a very, very short memory. And I've gone over this dozens of times since Saturday night. Look at the outcomes of the 14 playoff for 10 years and look at the semifinal games. The vast majority of them were absolute blowouts. I mean, tail kickings. And that was supposed to be the top, 4 to 6 teams. What did you think was going to happen when you start expanding this out to teams that really aren't equipped to win a national championship? We all feel warm and fuzzy about letting them in. But what did you think was going to happen when we saw this already for 10 years in the semifinals when it was just 4?
Yep. ESPN's Tom Luginbill is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, fresh off his trip to Happy Valley. Let's go back to Friday night in Notre Dame as they get ready to play Georgia. If I told you there's a team in that game that's got a quarterback that doesn't really beat you, doesn't make mistakes, he can be labeled as a game manager. They've got a physical run game that is also explosive. They play really solid defense. I'm normally talking about the Georgia Bulldogs, but that is the way Notre Dame is playing right now.
Notre Dame could win the national championship, guys. They have goods that travel. 3 of them in particular. They can run the football, they can stop the run, and they don't beat themselves. And I would actually add, and I've broadcasted a couple of Riley Leonard's games when he was at Duke, but I thought that guy made a ton of plays with his legs and navigating the pocket and getting the ball where it needed to go, maybe more so than he had all year long in the most important of the game of the season to this point. I think that stood out to me about the first round games is like Will Howard's never played like that. Well, to get through this gauntlet, you better have stellar quarterback play. Riley Leonard probably played his best game on Friday night. Quinn Ewers actually looked back like he was back in charge of the offense at Texas. So Listen, I think this is going to be a really, really good football game. I think it's a national championship caliber style game between Georgia and Notre Dame. I think we all got to ask ourselves, right? Which Gunner Stockton will we see? It's one thing to come off the bench, right, and have great players around you and have momentum. You make some plays and you win the game, and everybody's patting you on the back, and you played really well, and that's exciting. Now you've got 2 weeks to go to get ready for a team like Notre Dame, which is going to be a bit of a different animal. Now you're the starter, and it's on you. And this is a Georgia team that has not been able to run the football exceptionally well in terms of a consistent high level of yards per game output. So for me, I think that Notre Dame defensively is going to really test Gunner Stockton early, whether that's through pressure, whether that's changing the picture post-snap. Let's see what he's capable of if you're Notre Dame on defense. And if you smell blood in the water, expect some pressure all night long.
Well, not to break it down into a Georgia-Notre Dame preview, I do think Notre Dame can beat Georgia because of the quarterback situation, but I think Stockton's going to actually bring the running element in a little bit more.
Yes.
And I think Georgia's offense this whole time off is being reconstructed around Gunner Stockton, and it may actually fit this group of players better than the Carson Beck. Not that he's better than Carson Beck. I wish Georgia had Carson Beck, but with what they have at receiver, what they have on the offensive line, what they have at running back, the quarterback run element may help this Georgia team in the long run against Notre Dame.
Couldn't agree with you more. You guys have heard me say it for years, that just the impact of a running quarterback on an opposing defense because of how you have to deal with the box, it just changes everything. And so now you add that running element to Georgia's offense with the quarterback position, and it puts Notre Dame in a spot because Indiana didn't have that with Curtis Rourke. That's not who they were. But now Notre Dame's going to have that on defense with Georgia, and I think that could be an X factor, and also something too that just lends to Gunner Stockton's strength. So you're not taking everything and putting it on his plate in the passing game only, and then just turning around and handing it off. The fact that he'll be a part of that really adds, I think, some diversity to the offense.
I believe that argument about Alabama should have been in, Ole Miss should have been in, South Carolina should have been in, ended when Tennessee got their butts whipped against Ohio State, because that was, somebody who beat Alabama where they finished. I thought that was a pretty bad moment in SEC postseason history. What was your takeaway of how Tennessee looked in that contest?
Well, I think they ran into a bit of a buzzsaw. And, you go into a contest like that with a freshman quarterback, and it's a big moment. And in order to get through a tournament like this, it's no different than the NFL playoffs. The quarterback play is going to have to be exceptional. It's going to have to be really, really strong. And it's going to have to get better each and every week. And out of nowhere, Will Howard comes out with this performance that I don't think anybody saw coming. I mean, Ohio State made it look easy. And that's not an indictment on Tennessee's team or their season. It's an indictment on one evening. And you could say the same thing about SMU. You can say the same thing about Clemson. And for me, I thought they were out. I thought Tennessee was outmanned, and I was really surprised at how their defensive front just disappeared. I mean, James Pierce was non-existent. And in a line of scrimmage type of game on the road, where you got to have good quarterback play, you got to be able to run the football, stop the run. But where they had problems was in the explosive play department. Tennessee could not handle the explosive play on defense, and that was ultimately the difference of the game. And guys, I don't know what we're going to see the rest of the playoff in terms of performance. I know what we've seen throughout the year, right? We've seen Ohio State be very good. We've seen Ohio State look very bad. Same with Georgia. Same with Texas. We've seen this across college football, probably more deficiencies and warts than we've ever seen amongst top-tier teams. But if you told me that Ohio State team was going to be the one that shows up each and every week, I don't see anybody beating that team.
Tom Luginbill is on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Luginbill will next be at the Fiesta Bowl. So
I got the Rate Bowl first.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Luginbill will next be at the Rate Bowl and then the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, but in playoff terms, he'll be
playoff
at the
terms.
Fiesta.
Yes, at the Fiesta.
Yes.
Tackle game day with a great taste of Coke Zero Sugar. Is it the best Coke ever? Try and decide. Coke Zero Sugar. As much as Ryan Day gets hammered, Luginbill, you got to give him a ton of credit to pick that team up off the mat emotionally. Forget X's and O's. Just the psychology he did with that team.
His job was on the line.
I mean, that's what everybody says. That's what everybody says. His job was on the line. Whether it was or not, Luginbill, that was an amazing psychological job to get his team from where they were at the end of that Michigan game to the way they played against an SEC power, that was an impressive coaching job by Ryan Day.
Unbelievable, all psychological. Imagine the positivity and the personality you have to exude in that building almost every minute of the day after that loss to Michigan to keep your kids on the right path, because it could have gone one of two ways. They could have allowed that Michigan game to just spill right over in the woe is me, feel bad for yourself, and go lay an egg at home against Tennessee. I don't know if you guys saw the walkout when Ryan Day got off the bus and they had him on camera walking through the tunnel, about to enter the horseshoe and walk across the field. He had a walk like he was Vince McMahon coming out of the curtain at a WWE event. I mean, there was swagger, there was determination, there was a look on his face looked like it was steel. And it was like, if this team plays the way he looks, Ohio State's going to be pretty good tonight. So you're right. It was a fantastic job. And, listen, all of the criticism of, Ohio State or even James Franklin at Penn State with big games, highly ranked teams and not coming to the forefront and playing well. They all bought themselves a little bit of time between the next level of criticism with winning.
which will start at some point near the Oregon.
It'll come.
Yeah, it'll come. Look, Clemson's been bad against the run all year. You've seen them a lot, Luke. So all year they have not been able to stop the run. That said, what Texas did to them in the run game the Texas offensive line, and they were losing offensive linemen in that game, and it didn't matter. They were just dominating the front in that game.
It is. To me, it's a bit embarrassing to watch Clemson's personnel on defense play the way they play. There's 3 or 4 first-rounders in that front 7 at Clemson right now. But when you watch them, they're always trying to trick you. They're always trying to move and stunt and line twist and this and that. And sometimes I think they play themselves right out of solid, basic, fundamental football principles because their run fits have been horrendous. They were going back to the Citadel game, back to the Louisville game. They still haven't tackled Lenore Sellers. And we're not talking about a team with bad players. We're talking about a team with NFL caliber players at just about every level. And it's frustrating. And I'm actually surprised that a move hasn't been made from a coaching staff perspective on behalf of Dabo Swinney, because I think they've played themselves out of quality football on that side of the ball that has not allowed for them to match what their talent level is, because that's inexcusable to play that way versus the run. And they're capable of playing with a Texas team, but not when your run fits and your movement and you're out of focus. It's just not going to happen.
I don't know if Texas can run their way to a national championship, but it looks to me like the ankle and still lingering effects of the oblique injury are impacting Quinn Ewers. He almost it works out good with the run game like that. He's game manager, Quinn Ewers, and that sort of works for them. But he's not. I can take my ball and go beat you with my arm, Quinn Ewers, right now. Does Texas have, despite your cowboy hat here, does Texas have the hat to go win and the boots to go win this national championship? They're in the tough side of the bracket, man. They're in the tough side of the bracket.
Well, yeah, and listen, the thing that they have that in an advantage from an advantage perspective against this upcoming opponent is their depth, their competitive depth, their ones, their twos, their threes across the board are going to be so far superior to the opponent that they are playing. And don't get me wrong, it's an unbelievable story. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody would have wanted to play Arizona State if Arizona State got a first-round game.
Right.
Because that team was so hot and playing so well. Can you carry that momentum over? I don't think Quinn Ewers has even looked close to what he's been capable of or what we've seen of him in the past all year long. It's been a very up and down season. And I know some of that's been injury related, but also I feel like some of it has been a bit confidence related. He doesn't seem to be naturally pulling the trigger. He doesn't seem to be playing street ball and just letting it rip and unleashing it. There's some hesitation there at times. And I think the thing that saves him is when they can run the football. When they can't run the football as effectively as they did the other night, then I think people come after Quinn Ewers, because what Quinn Ewers has shown is if there's people in his face, he'll throw it to the other team. He's done it all year long. The way you keep people out of his face is if they can't stop the run and then you get in manageable second and third downs, and now it becomes a whole lot easier on the quarterback. I think that is a central focus of Texas, is to run the football, not just because you want to run it, but because you need to give your quarterback some relief. He needs relief.
Can you, speaking of quarterbacks, Penn State didn't have to, flex their offensive muscle because of the pick sixes and things like that.
But they couldn't run on SMU early.
That's what I was about to ask. Yeah. Are you concerned about Penn State's offense even in their next game?
Yes. So I'm glad you guys said that because nobody's brought that up. Penn State could not move the football on SMU,
and they couldn't stop. And they couldn't stop SMU on offense, other than the pick sixes, obviously. Yeah,
exactly. And so, so much of these games are early moments in the game where a tone has to get set, a play has to get made. Well, the ball gets kicked off. SMU immediately 3 and out. Penn State offense can't convert. Then SMU goes right down the field, and on that 4th and 1, they call a fantastic play call. And if Kevin Jennings just runs for it, he gets the first down. If he throws a better pass, he has a touchdown. And that changed the entire tone of the rest of the first half. And, you would have quieted the crowd. You would have removed that part of the equation. It just goes to show you how little moments are in there. But to your guys' point, Penn State did not score an offensive point until there was 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. And everybody talks about Penn State's run game in the second half. Well, yeah, the defense is on the field the entire game. They just got worn out. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that Penn State's going to have to be far more creative, far more dynamic on offense in the Fiesta Bowl. And I'm going to be there on the Penn State sideline covering that side of it than they were against SMU. And I don't know if Penn State thought that they could win the game without and be vanilla, almost be basic, not show their hand, not have any wrinkles, because they weren't near as creative as they've been all year long. Andy Kolomicki, that's a staple of his in that offense. Defensively, they're a handful. That number 11 might be the best defensive football player I have seen in person all year long. I mean, he is on a different level. And listen, the thing that's interesting about this upcoming game is all we hear about is Ashton Jeanty, right? Can the lay college football fan even tell you the name of Boise State's quarterback?
Not many, no.
Right? And so you're sitting there going, well, something's going to give this week. Because if I'm Tom Allen, the defensive coordinator, why would I not just line up everybody in the box and say, all right, young man, if you can beat us through the air, we're going to shake your hand and congratulate you. But we sure as hell ain't let number 2 beat us.
That's right.
Right? And nobody seems to have made that commitment. I understand it's group of 5 defenses, and that Boise State is a really good football team, and they've overwhelmed people at the point of attack. I don't think you overwhelm Penn State at the point of attack, especially if they decide to load up that box. It could be tough sledding. And now that quarterback, as I mentioned before, the deeper you get into this, the more the quarterback's going to matter. They got to force him to win the game.
Listen, I was a better sports producer than I was a sports anchor, so I'm going to help you out when you guys starting to plan out your coverage. Go ahead and pull up clips of the 2010 BCS National Championship of Oregon and Auburn slipping on that field that you're about to go to. Yeah. Pull up the last Super Bowl clips of people slipping, and then have a hit ready to go on the sidelines, Luginbill, with Penn State's cleats, what they're deciding to wear, and let the equipment guy know it is slicker than you're going to imagine. They try everything, and you'll get to that arena, and it will impact the game. I don't care who's playing, it will impact the game.
I talk to Dave Pasch about this all the time. We've talked about it for 10 years. He's the voice of the Arizona Cardinals, and that field, slides in and out of the stadium. And I don't know if it just doesn't have any type of root structure, but there's clearly a problem. They don't ever seem to address it.
Yeah, no doubt.
And while we play meaningful games there, I have no idea. No idea.
Hey, before you go away from the playoff, if you could give us what Auburn is getting in Georgia Tech's Eric Singleton, and what Alabama is getting in Miami's Isaiah Horton, both those receivers going to those 2 schools out of the transfer portal.
So the thing about Singleton and Georgia Tech, poor Brent Key, he's lost some really good skill guys to the transfer portal because but Singleton is one of the fastest players. He's a 10-3 guy running the 100-meter, but he is a triple threat. He can return kicks, he can return punts, and then he's a threat at all 3 levels of the field because he can catch the bubble screen and turn it into an 80-yard foot race, but he can also stem you up and push the ball vertically. he's going to be a really nice complement that you can move around while you've got Cam Coleman on the outside. I think Horton's one of those guys, and watching him, that was a really good receiving crew as a whole at Miami. Just a really good route runner. I think guys that know how to get open become the reliable go-to guy for the quarterback because he understands how to eat up cushion, attack alignment, create separation so that the window for the ball and for the quarterback is larger than it would be versus somebody who's maybe just athletic but doesn't know how to manipulate coverage. So I think it's really two good pickups. It's a good receiving class in the portal this year, so there were a ton of guys to choose from to upgrade the roster.
All right, very well done. Tom Luginbill, he saw those guys there in the ACC a lot, so and saw them in the recruiting process. So Luke's watched a lot of film on those guys. Luke's enjoyed the Rate Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl, and more importantly, I hope the entire Luginbill family has a Merry Christmas and safe travels.
Merry Christmas to you guys. Thank you very much, and best to all you and your families.
Yep, you too. Thank you, Luke. Take care, buddy.
All right, guys. See you.
All right, Tom Luginbill with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.